Talk about a rainstorm.
I don't have a rain gauge, but look at these barrels that we got at an auction earlier. Wow. Look at this.
That looks like at least 3 inches, if not 4, maybe even more than 4 inches. Maybe I should get a tape measure and check it out. Anyway, I wanted to walk around the farm and show you what it looks like after a major rainstorm, how things drain, identify some problems, see where there are some successes. Can the farm take a rainfall like that? What happens? How do things drain? Is there anything that's going to drown? Is there anything that's going to wash away, leak? It's interesting to see how we weather a storm like this.
Well, this is a brand new patch of ground that we tilled up right alongside the driveway. You can see all the gravel in it. See the dry beans coming up, double rows of dry beans and sweet corn as well. As you can see, the gravel really does handle the moisture well. A little farther down, it looks like we have some drainage issues.
I don't necessarily like seeing that. What that means is that gradually the soil is going to erode downhill and we are going to be left with less and less soil, more of a slope. So I'm going to have to think about that. Is there a way that I can ditch that in some way so that we don't have that level of erosion after a major rainfall like that? Something for me to think about.
The front garden is well established. Definitely have some ponding in the rows of the onions here, but nothing that isn't going to drain very soon. The green beans, likewise, I see some ponding there, but nothing that the beans shouldn't be able to handle. Strawberries, a little weedy. And the asparagus now gone to seed.
Take a look and see how things are doing farther back. The potatoes look windswept. The mulch really helps to absorb a lot of that moisture though. Some of Rosemary's plants are ponded over here. I don't like seeing that flowing water. I like to see more infiltration, but this isn't too bad. Tomatoes are all upright. Even the ones that we don't have staked yet are all upright. That's a good thing. The greenhouse is still up. That's good. A few times this morning I came in here and pushed the water up because it was gathering on the roof. The wind over time has loosened the cover and the water can push down because the plastic is loose up here, but it's nothing so long as I'm home that I can't handle. So the greenhouse survived. That's good. Mr. Porter, look a little wet in there. Yikes. What do you think? The boar's situation is not perfect. He does have his shelter and the water drains around it. But really, when I built this shelter against the silo, I wasn't thinking about how the water needs to flow, and it actually goes right through his shelter. It's great for his mud hole, but I need to build more of a ditch so that the water can flow through and he doesn't get drowned out when it rains as heavily as it did.
What are you guys doing in here? What are you doing in here? That's just silly. Even the calves are in here. You goofballs. In the mud? Seriously? Well, somebody found a peaceful, dry place to sleep.
It's pretty wet in the barn there, and there's a reason for it. Usually the water drains better on the concrete barnyard, but if you look in here, you can see that when I built these hay feeders for the goats this winter and they wasted all this hay, they really mounded it up exactly where the water should flow. So the water gets stuck up here and drains right through the barn, whereas it should cascade down the concrete into the pasture. This is something I can fix when I pick up this manure.
Maybe I should prioritize that job. What's up, Hildy? How's it going out in the pasture? Can we look at the pigs? There's Mama and baby. Babies, I should say. 8 of them. Pretty muddy in there. But they have the shelter and a nice hay pile. Well, this looks like a better place to gather than in that gross barn. You guys are the smart goats, I guess. And there's Lily back there. Hi, Curry. I'm walking down through the goat pasture toward the ravine. You can see they've eaten this down very nicely. The front pasture we haven't yet grazed. You can see how much taller the grass is there. You coming with, Hildy? Yes? All right, let's go look. Hello, buddies. Look at all that water. Wow. We have a ridgetop farm. Farms around here are either valley farms or ridgetop farms. And we're at the very top of the ridge, so when it rains like this, the ravine that borders this side of our property, all the water cascades into the ravine, and as you can see, it really flows. It won't be like this for long, but for a little while, we have a stream running through our property. Not impressed, huh? Not impressed. What about you, buddy? Oh, really? Is that your opinion? The cows don't mind the rain. They'll come out and they'll graze all through the rain, but goats prefer to stay dry, and they've been under shelter most of the day, and now that the rain's over, they're going to come out and nibble on the tops of things. So that's basically the status for the animals right now. They survived, they got under shelter, it's muddy, they don't like it. Milking is going to be a little messier for a while, but the infrastructure, be what it may here, has survived yet another deluge. I need to check out the produce field. Did the plants survive? Anything get washed away? Well, I'm passing through the pole barn where half of the first cutting hay is safely under shelter because I wanted to show you these. These are the Brussels sprouts. They had to be pulled in here into the pole barn because I had taken them out of the greenhouse yesterday. I hadn't realized quite how bad the storm was going to be. Before they're planted, probably next week, they need to be hardened off, and what that means is they need to get a little wind and a little variance in temperature and just the airflow, the sort of conditions that they'll experience outside, so that they don't have as much of a shock to the system when they're finally planted and they have to deal with the conditions of the field. But I'll tell you what, those plants coming out of the greenhouse, they can't handle a storm like that. So this trailer was hooked up very quickly to the Suburban, and I backed it in here as soon as the storm came through. Let's go take a look at the produce field. Hello, Max. How are the goats? How are things out here? Max is out here with the little goats who are eating down the area where I will till up and plant the Brussels. But what you see here are some of the kale, definitely water between the rows, and below that the corn that the boys planted for me. And we definitely, here on the ridge, the very top of the ridge going down, we do have some water flowing down. My idea was, having hilled the kale, that most of the water would be captured. If I can capture the water in between the rows, it's going to stay there and infiltrate into the soil. So what I'm looking for, and what I don't want to see, is any place where my hills were broached and where the water is going downhill and carrying with it the topsoil.
Mostly good, standing water, but as you can see, the water is in place. Although down here, looks like I have a broach. Well, it's not the end of the world, but this is pretty much what the hilling is intended to avoid. And it looks like I have at least one broach here in the very wettest part of the field, which is bare soil, and where I have the water flowing downward. It was a hard rainfall. I'm not going to have 100%, but mostly my plan worked. Just one bad spot there. Up here above the goats and the future crossing area, we have more kale planted. The drainage is a little bit better here. Everything's in between the rows. That looks much better. Top field of garlic with that mulch. It's doing very well. Up here above the top field of garlic, or below it I guess I should say, south of it, we have the zucchini and summer squash. And as you can see, there's a little bit of a dip and nowhere for the water to go when it rains this hard, which is fine for erosion's sake. But the other problem that can occur if the water doesn't go anywhere is that possibly the plants can drown. And that's what I'm looking out for here. If you look a little more closely, there's a little zucchini that came up. We actually went through and replanted about 2/3 of the zucchini and summer squash because honestly I had planted too early and my germination was poor. I did hill when I planted those seeds. The thing that I'm watching out for is the potential that the seeds, if they're germinating right now, those little plants could drown before they ever emerge. So we have another chance for rain, I believe the day after tomorrow, and then a nice dry stretch. What I'm hoping is that the water here will infiltrate and we'll get some nice dry now. Those plants will be walking down along the lower field of garlic. You can see the sunflowers are in the water, but they're big and tall. They're up, which is excellent. There's the lower field of garlic. Overall, I like what I see. The garlic looks beautiful with that mulch and the soil underneath. It's going to absorb that water and it's going to hold the moisture over the dry stretch. I'm looking forward to the scapes emerging for the hardneck garlic. I'm sure I'll have another video on that. I guess my main concerns are thinking about the wettest part down below where that kale is and where you saw the erosion happening. That's not something I want to see. Later this summer I'm going to be planting clover in the rows, and that's going to help because when you have roots instead of bare soil, that helps the water to infiltrate instead of pool there. But it's too early for me to plant that clover because the weeds would come up too, and ultimately I'd just be left with rows of weeds. I need to wait at least for another cultivation before I plant that clover. My other main concern, I think, looking at it, is the zucchini and summer squash and this little bit of winter squash that we have here. Just crossing my fingers and saying a prayer, too, that the water drains and that these seeds germinate instead of drown. That's it for today. I just wanted to show you how we survived 4+ inches, honestly, thinking about it. The deluge of rain here. A beautiful blessing, but also one where when it comes that quickly, gives a farmer just a little bit of concern and urgency in making sure that things don't fall down and things don't drown. Follow along, subscribe, and You'll see more of our planting and cultivating, harvesting, and farming adventures here at Kleinshire. God bless.